Fortnite's The Apocalypse Chapter 187 is officially out, and this was another really well-made chapter. We got some really cool action, we got some more instances of how Diodora's ability works, and officially got a name to Diodora's ability, while everybody is just completely confused as to how Diodora is doing this. NASIENS is put on the back foot, and we have a nail-biter of a endpoint for the chapter. A really interesting cliffhanger, and we gotta wait and see how the next chapter is going to pick up, because I am concerned with how this will affect the story overall and how fans will end up reacting to this if certain aspects aren't addressed within the next few chapters. But before we jump into things, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps, and it shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel and shows you want to see more. And don't forget to jump in the comments down below at the end of this video to give me your thoughts on this chapter, your theories, speculations, or whatever other ideas you have based off of this chapter and the series as a whole for a comment discussion video for later in the week. I didn't have one for last week's chapter due to me not having the time to do it, so sorry about that, but next one is definitely going to be on schedule, either be releasing on a Thursday or a Saturday, so look forward to that later on in the week. Also, if you want to see me talk about American comic books, go and check out my second channel, GW Comics, where I'm currently catching up on a bunch of comics that I've been meaning to talk about, like the first issues of Absolute Martian Manhunter and Absolute Flash, and I got a big Absolute Batman video coming up as well, and I am continuing my coverage of the Naruto TMNT crossover comic with a video on the recent issue coming out within the next week or two, so look forward to all that. And if you want to see me talk about a whole bunch of different manga, go and check out my manga podcast, Shonen Pulse, over on the Panel Focus YouTube channel, where me, Nox, and Yadogami talk about 9 separate manga from 3 different magazines. It's a lot of fun, and I think you guys would really enjoy the discussions. Side note, I am taking a break from the podcast for about a month, but Nox and Yado talk a lot about this stuff in really great detail, and I would really appreciate if you guys checked it out. And they're also going to be having on a few guests every few weeks, so it's definitely going to be a lot of fun, even if I am not there for about a month. So please go and check it out. I would really, really appreciate it. Now, with that out of the way, let's jump right into the chapter. So chapter 187 of Fortnite's The Apocalypse, titled The Boys Fall into Darkness. Cover image is just NASIENS and Percival flying through the skies of Britannia. Yeah, this is too wholesome of an image for things not to go dark, right? Right? Okay, we're gonna find out soon. So, we continue on from the last chapter where Diodora managed to basically rebound his damage onto NASIENS' left shoulder, shocking the entire crowd, wondering how Diodora being hit by the spear ended up doing nothing afterwards and end up happening to NASIENS with him taking the damage. And as NASIENS is floating in the air, catching their footing, we end up seeing the 2 purgatory beasts tower over NASIENS. Percival is incredibly concerned for NASIENS as these 2 begin to launch another assault on NASIENS while he's in a weakened state, but it's in that instance where NASIENS once again makes a hand gesture, summoning back the Percival Spear, and hitting and seemingly knocking out the 2 Purgatory Beasts in a really awesome single page, showcasing just the sheer strength of the Percival Spear from Chastiful. And from that rebound, NASIENS then makes the Percival Spear go straight towards Diodora, hitting his right hip, but that ends up hitting NASIENS due to Diodora's rebound. And now everybody is concerned as to how Diodora managed to take the damage from himself and just transfer it over to NASIENS. And remember, we know that the announcer is just go through the skies, and he's wondering what's going on with this magical force. It's not full counter, it isn't something like Meliodas, which is something that a lot of people were speculating on if this was similar to full counter or is just full counter or revenge counter. No, it's something entirely different. The properties of how this ability works is 100% different, but I can get the confusion. Now, everybody is very concerned and confused over what's happened to NASIENS, but in that instance, Diodora's armor and clothing just instantly repairs itself, which Diodora ends up saying how, well, useful it is. It's not only just immune to the miasma of purgatory, it also repairs itself, so it's fully magical, which is honestly incredibly useful for anybody. Just if your clothes are torn up and your armor is torn up from like just insane battle, oh, it repairs itself like that, which, yeah, that's pretty useful armor. But Diodora does say that even though its defense is very low and it is a negative to having on, it is still very useful and it has a really good match for Diodora's magic ability, especially right now. As Diodora looks over at NASIENS laying down on the ground, bleeding from these attacks, going on to say, that looks painful. Without this power of mine, I'd have lost by now. As Naziens is asking, what did you do to me? Diodora, with a innocent and, again, sadistic, creepy smile, says, only what you tried to do to me. You stabbed me in the shoulder and leg. That's all. Naziens is still confused by this, but Diodora keeps talking, saying, Rothus broke my neck in an attempt to kill me. Instead, he died of a broken neck. Turd attempted to lash me to death. Instead, he was the one mangled. And Naziens says, wait, your friends betrayed you? Diodora stares down at his hands with a bit of dismay, as he goes on to say, I'm sure they're regretting it now wherever they are, as Diodora laughs, saying, when they died, after all, their magic found a new home in me. Naziens struggles to get back up with panted breathing. Diodora shouts as loud as he can, staring up at the sky, saying, this is God's gift to me. After I was thrust into the deepest pit of despair, so I can take revenge against everything in this world. You see this magic, a magic called despair, as we get an image of Percival hearing these words. And look, again, Nakaba is not always the greatest when it comes to just teasing parallels. He kind of beats you over the head with it a lot of the times. And this is just flat out saying Diodora is Percival's natural opposite at this point. Percival is hope, and that is his magic power. Diodora is despair. That's his magic power, and that's how his magic power essentially got awakened. Same with Percival. So, yeah, it's beating you over the head with it, but at the same time, the presentation is done well enough that it doesn't sound jarring. But yeah, I am glad we finally got Diodora's actual name for his magical ability, which, yeah, we all kind of suspected would be something similar to like despair or something, considering that is what Diodora is being built up to be. The announcer says how terrifying this ability is, and that it really is just despair, pure and simple, wondering how Naziens will fight back. Gawain calls this magic ability more of a curse than magic, with Percival still concerned for Naziens. Diodora takes some steps forward, heading towards Naziens, saying, you don't seem too mobile any longer. Let me finish this up right now. Naziens tries to reach Diodora's, compassionate side, which no longer exists. As Naziens says, I know how painful it is when you can't trust anyone, but I know there are still people worthy of your trust. But Diodora is not having any of it, telling Naziens not to lecture him. And as Diodora goes to slash and deal the final blow to Naziens, Naziens blocks it with their blades. But Naziens is perfectly fine. All of their wounds are healed, which confuses Diodora. The wounds ran so deep, but how are they all gone? Naziens reflects Diodora's sword as the fight gets back into motion, with Percival realizing that what happened was Percival. I love how Gawain's like, why are you shouting out your own name like that and so loud? But Percival goes on to explain that this is the new drug that Naziens developed over the 2-year time skip that Naziens was making in order to try and reawaken Percival and bring him back from his death-like state. But it is an incredibly powerful healing herb that just now Naziens used venom mixing to end up healing all their wounds. So that's actually pretty perfect, and again, kind of broken, to be honest. At first, before the explanation that it was Percival, I thought Naziens secretly used and unlocked their own version of Pollen Garden to slowly heal their wounds while Diodora was talking. But then again, probably would have been incredibly noticeable, but it is what it is. And I think this is a good utilization, as this shows some of Naziens' own capabilities without Spiritual Chastity Full enhancing Naziens' abilities. So I like this addition very much, and it brings back something from the start of the time skip that Naziens developed tirelessly throughout. It makes it incredibly useful. So that I really, really do appreciate. Naziens goes on to say, I'm afraid you can't take me down that easily. I still have so much left I want to accomplish. Naziens and Diodora get into it as they begin to clash once more. Diodora saying, stop being ridiculous, you know I'm going to kill you here. I'll kill you and then I'll put an end to the one you love with your own magic. Naziens says they won't let Diodora hurt Percival, landing a cut on Diodora's face. But thanks to Diodora's magic, it gets transferred over to Naziens instead, as all Diodora does is snicker. Naziens ends up trying to come up with a solution, saying that if nothing will be able to damage Diodora, then something else could work. Instead, Naziens uses venom mixing, combining Misty Rain with Belladonna to encase a poisonous mist around Diodora. And it's then that Diodora begins to doze off. But as Diodora seems to finally get knocked out by this mist, Diodora snaps back awake, startling him. As he's like, was that your magic? I was almost put to sleep for a moment. with Nasien's asking if Diodora can actually also just rebound poisons. Diodora says, oh, it was poison? Then why are you not affected? Which we all know, and Nasien's goes on to explain, it's because Nasien's over the years has basically been ingesting multiple different poisons to make poisons themselves and create antidotes for them, which is how Nasien's is basically immune to almost every single poison that they have ingested and has high resistance to toxins and poisons. And An and Donnie are very concerned for Nasien's in this instance because even their poison isn't working right now. But Nasien's begins to go a bit deep in thought and get serious, thinking over what just happened, saying, it was just for an instant, but it did work on him. It shows that his resistance is weaker against any element not in a purgatorial miasma, I believe. And if there's any poison that'll let me finish this in that single instance, it'll have to be this one. As Nasien's runs forward with them believing that there is an idea that they came up with to finally put an end to Diodora in an instance due to a very weak resistance to poison and the sleeping poison almost working on him. Nasien's pulls something out of his bag as Diodora tries to slash at Nasien's. Nasien's gets down on the ground at a good position and then launches a needle with the poison Blood Skull, which, if I'm not mistaken, let me know in the comments, I think this is something Nasien's found in the Fairy King's Forest, because this is something that Nasien's has never used before, but Nasien's thrusts this needle that pierces right through Diodora's armor into his chest. And in that instance, Diodora's heartbeat stops, as it seems for an instant Diodora has died. And Percival just is in shock that Diodora's heart has stopped. And even Beltram's confused that this ability ended up, well, taking the life of Diodora in an instant. And as Nasien's breathes a sigh of relief, their own heart ends up stopping, with Nasien's final thoughts being, not even this? As Nasien's collapses to the ground, with everyone in shock, with the final panel being Diodora just wiping away sweat, saying, wow, I thought it was dead for a second. And that's how the chapter ends. So, Nasien's downfall at the end of the day was due to a lack of understanding of Diodora's ability. Now, I get where Nasien's was going for with this. Since the poison did work on Diodora for a brief instance, Nasien's believed if they did manage to just in an instant stop Diodora's heart with the needle and that poison, then Nasien's wouldn't get the rebound. But no, just after that stopped heartbeat and the death of Diodora, Diodora's magic despair rebounded that onto Nasien's, and despite Nasien's own actual resistance to poisons, this did seemingly stop Nasien's heart, killing Nasien's. Now, obviously, the chapter ended like this on a cliffhanger, so by next chapter, for all we know, Nasien's natural immunity will end up just jumpstarting his heart, or Nasien's will be out for long enough for Diodora to be declared the winner, and Percival coming out and healing Nasien's as much as he possibly can, perhaps with the help of Gawain to help with the poisons and all that to bring Nasien's back to life or to restart their heart. But yeah, Diodora's ability is even more insane, so it's showing that it's not just physical damage, but also poisons. And while it did take a bit longer in comparison to the physical damage, we do get to see that this can also be a rebounded ability. So I'm curious to see how Percival is going to deal with literally his natural opposite and an opponent that any type of damage or alteration or poisoning could just be rebounded onto their opponents. So I'm curious to see how Diodora is going to deal with Percival and how Percival is going to deal with Diodora. But that's something for their inevitable fight, and I'm curious to see how Nakaba will end up making that fight not only incredibly entertaining, but also have things play out in a very nail-biting manner that'll make things make sense and be a creative solution to this situation. But that's really it for chapter 187. I'm curious to see what you guys think of this fight and how Diodora's abilities are potentially going to expand from here, or if we'll get full concrete rules within the next fight, which will be most likely Diodora versus Percival. And not only that, with this fight seemingly out of the way for all we know, we will end up getting definitely one of, if not the most hyped up fight of this arc, which is Gawain versus Balin, and then we'll get Tristan's fight with Isolde, and then we'll get the semifinals, and then we'll get the finals eventually. But yeah, I'm curious to see where things are going to go from here. But yeah, leave your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. I'll address them in a comment discussion video going forward. And if you haven't already, like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. Really helps, shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel, and shows you want to see more. And with all that said and done, I hope you guys have an awesome day.